Hi class. So I have open, this is our practice from chapter 2, but more importantly it is exercise 237 in Connect. What we have here are 44 data points or observations, and when you click here for the Excel data file, it will bring you to the Excel file right here. So the first question that it's asking you is to find the smallest class interval. Effectively, what is I? We all know that I must be greater than or equal to H, which is the high number in the data set, minus L, which is the low number in the data set, divided by K. I've already established a K of 6 because I know that 2 to the 6 is greater than my N, which is 64. Okay, if I use 2 to the 5, I would only have 32, and of course 32 is not greater than 44. So I'm using the number 6, and if you look at the formula down here, that's your I, or your class interval formula, high number of 265 minus the low number of 82, all divided by the K of 6. Where do I get the high and the low number? Well, I can look right here at the data, or I can look at Excel and sort. To sort, of course, just click on the variable name, click on Sort, A to Z, and it'll sort your data set for you. So I see my lowest number is 82, and the high number is 65, which corresponds with these numbers down here. And again, my K is 6. So find the smallest class interval, that would be, and rounding to the second decimal place, that would be 30.50. All right. Now we want to organize the data into a frequency distribution using a lower limit of 70. So it is telling us that we want 70 to be the beginning of the first class, and we want our class size, or our class width, to be 35. How do we know 35? Because the gap between 105 and 70 is 35. So we want that to be our class width for all of our classes. Alright, let's take a look at how to do this. Back to Excel. Let's create a pivot table. Insert, pivot table. Make sure all our data is highlighted. And then existing worksheet, location, find an empty cell, hit OK. When you hit OK, it's going to create a pivot table. Now, I want to drop amount into the row label, drop the amount into the summation of values, and you see what I have here are matching columns. Of course, I don't want them to match. I want this column to be a count, so I'm going to click here on Sum, Value Field Settings, click Count, and OK. That changes all of my values in this box to a count. In other words, how many times does 82 show up in this entire data set? One time. How many times does 86 show up in this entire data set? One time. So it just gives you the number of times each of these observations or data points show up in the data set. Now I have to group, and I right click, group. I want to start at 70 because that's the number that Connect told us to start at, which is right here. This is the 70. That's why we're using 70. I'm going to end at 265, and the by will be 35 because, again, that is the class width that Connect is giving us information about. 105 to 70 is a 35 class width. Alright, hit OK. Now, the classes that Connect comes up with, or shows us, are 70 to 104, 105 to 139, etc. These are acceptable. The only issue is that in Connect, almost all of your frequency distributions have overlapping classes. I mean, this is 105 at the end of this first class, and the beginning of the second class is also 105. Also, this is 140, the end of the second class, and at the beginning of the third class, again, 140. So if I want to match what Connect is requiring us to have, I need to alter this frequency distribution. I need to alter these classes. An easy way to do this is to click on one of the numbers over here in my data set, enter a decimal of 0.1, click back over here on my pivot, on my frequency distribution, click on Options, refresh the data, and I will now have overlapping classes which match the way Connect is asking us to enter the data. Do you have to create overlapping classes each time? Well, if you're working in Connect, the answer is usually yes. But once you're working out there in the real world, to not have overlapping classes is not the worst thing. In fact, some people prefer that because then there's no issue about where certain data points should be entered. Okay? But for now, we're going to keep it overlapping. It's important, though, that you know how to do both, and that's what we just learned. Okay, so now I have my frequency table, which basically means if I look at my data, this represents how much a beginning skier spends on his or her initial purchase. Okay? So I want to, for example, interpret 14. There are 14 data points, okay, or 14 receipts that have a value of between $140 and $175. That's the interpretation. Okay, so now I want to create, and I'm going to create a little space here, and I'm going to call this a frequency distribution. And in another video, I'm going to show you how to create a relative frequency, a cumulative frequency, and a relative cumulative frequency. Check out the other video. Talk to you soon.